Passive income that's hassle-free and stress-free? Have you been hearing about what a great time it is to get into real estate, but you dread having to do it all by yourself? Or maybe you don't even know where to start. Do you want to literally sit back and receive rental checks each and every month while barely even lifting a finger? Then watch this short tutorial. I'm going to show you how you can quickly build a portfolio of rental properties that can fund your lifestyle and retirement. So regardless of what your dreams are, maybe it's to spend more time with your family or to travel with them, and maybe you want to fund your kids' education. Or maybe you want to donate to your favorite causes. Owning rental properties can help make each and every one of those dreams a reality. Hello, my name is Mike Wolf, and for the past 20 plus years, I've been teaching investors from all over the world how to create a life of freedom through real estate investing. And I've been featured on major media such as ABC, NBC, CBS, the Globe and Mail, Yahoo Finance, just to name a few. So for the last 5 years, due to increasing demand from busy professionals just like yourself who want everything done for them, I've been creating a program of turnkey properties. Now, a turnkey property is one where basically we've bought the home, first we've had it inspected, then we fixed everything that came up on the inspection report. After that, we searched for good tenants and put our property management team in place to look after it for you. And because I know how busy most of my professional clients are, we take care of everything from insurance and paying the property taxes for you, the utilities, you name it. We do everything to make it as stress-free for you as possible, and so we don't have to interrupt your busy work schedule and lifestyle. So basically what we do is look for the best neighborhoods. We seek out, we're not just buying anywhere. We're doing a lot of research. We're looking at different demographics and picking the right homes in the right neighborhoods. So to maximize, that will maximize your cash flow. So one of the things that we do once we find these great properties, one of the most important things you can ever do when it comes to real estate investing is to pick the right tenant. The wrong tenant will actually ruin your whole real estate investing career. And trust me, I've been through this over the years. So one of the things that we do is firstly a criminal background check on the prospective tenant. We also look for people that had really good credit up till the recession, because quite often, we had people that were really good with their money. They were previous homeowners, and then the recession kicked in, and maybe they lost their job. And at that point, their credit went down the tubes. So these make the perfect tenants because anybody who's ever previously owned a home will typically take much better care of the property than somebody who's been a renter all their life. Plus, somebody who's had bad credit even during the boom times, they have a very high likelihood of not paying their rent on time. So after we look at their criminal background check, we learn and their financial situation, we also do some extra checks. So before we allow them to move into the property, we do a random surprise visit at their existing property. And so we just tell them that we need one piece of paper signed. And basically, we get it to peek at how they're living in their existing property. And if we go there and there's weeds up to our knees, or maybe they said they had no pets, and when they open the door, there's a dozen dogs running around the house, we know these aren't going to be the right tenants for us. We know that whatever they're doing to this property is what they're going to do to your property. So we're very, very careful who we select as tenants, because as I mentioned, it's going to make or break what your return on investment looks like. Also, every single tenant that moves into one of any of our properties has to sign at least a 3-year lease. And we also give them what's called a lease option. And this basically gives them the option to purchase a property typically for at least 50% more than what you pay for the property. So what this means for you is that we've also have a built-in exit strategy where you're making a phenomenal ROI. And so what I mean by this is, let's say you bought a property for $100,000. Your tenant, what we call the tenant buyer, the person moving into your property, has the option to purchase it for $150,000. They're going to give a deposit which goes to you. This deposit is not refundable, so it's not like a damage deposit. They don't get it back if they move out. So now they've got some skin in the game, and it's going to keep them in the property longer. It's also going to most likely lead to them taking much better care of the property because they eventually want to own that property. Now, the fact of the matter is, in 3 years, most of these people will not qualify for a mortgage. And we know that, and they know that. But when the 3 years comes and goes, what we typically do is we'll allow them an extension. We'll give them another 3 years, but we're going to raise the rent considerably. We're also going to raise the eventual purchase price to them. So what this means is now maybe you've had the property for 6 years with no vacancy, hopefully no repairs, And at the end of the day, an amazing return on investment, whether they close on it in 3, 6, or even if they never close on it, you're just going to keep getting both the cash flow and the appreciation as the market goes up in Atlanta. So we're going to talk some more about why we picked Atlanta now. As many of you know, I've invested all over Canada and the US in my 24-year career, and Atlanta is one of my favorite markets of all. And there's several reasons for this. So let's talk about some of the facts regarding Atlanta. First of all, Forbes magazine ranks Atlanta number 1 for the rental market of all U.S. cities. So one of the things that I love about Atlanta is that it's basically very landlord friendly. So what this means is if we do happen to have a bad tenant that slips through the cracks and gets into one of our properties, we can get rid of them very quickly. So if you contrast that with a place such as California, for example, in California, if somebody knows how to work the system, they can basically live in your house for almost a year, even if they're not paying rent, even if they're damaging it. And imagine what that could do to your bottom line if you look at, having a home with no revenue for a whole year. In Atlanta, it's not like that at all. It's also ranked number 1 as the least expensive large city to do business in. So if it's a relatively inexpensive city to live in, then there's a pretty good likelihood that your tenants will be able to afford the rent. And that's very important because at the end of the day, we can look at some cities that maybe look like good rental markets in general, but if your tenant can't afford to pay your rent, at the end of the day, it doesn't lead to a good experience for you. Also, it ranks number 4 for the number of Fortune 500 companies that are headquartered in a city. So it's the head office to Coca-Cola, Turner Broadcasting, which owns CNN, Delta Airlines, Home Depot. The list goes on and on and on. And so not only are there a lot of different companies, but they're all in different industries. And so what this means is if you contrast that with Detroit, which is known for the auto industry, when the auto industry went down the tubes, basically the unemployment rate skyrocketed. So if one of those companies that I just mentioned, let's say Coca-Cola, were to close its doors tomorrow, which I strongly doubt would ever happen, but if it did, there's a whole bunch of other companies in different industries that can pick up and hire some of these people that get laid off. So it's very important to look at that. Also, Atlanta ranks number 3 for job growth. So what that means is that there's people moving from other cities to Atlanta to basically seek employment. A lot of cities where people are getting laid off, you look at places like Detroit, you look at Ohio, you look at some of those other cities where the economy is stagnant, or maybe it's getting worse. There's a lot of people leaving those cities. The population is going down and they're heading to places like Atlanta in search of employment. So what that means is there's more people putting a demand on the rental market, and that's great news for us as investors. So it's very important to keep in mind that quite often people say to me, wouldn't it be easier just to invest in your own backyard? Well, I think that's actually not an accurate statement for a couple of reasons. One is when we invest close to home, we tend to micromanage things. We tend to think, oh, well, it's in my own city, so I can basically, look after the property myself and collect my own rent. Well, I can tell you that I used to collect my own rent, and it used to cost me a ton of money. So I'll give you an example. I used to, quite often when I'd collect the rent, tenants knew I was a pretty laid-back guy. And so they'd say, Mike, we get paid on Friday. Is it okay if we pay you on Friday? And I'd always be very lenient and say, sure, no problem. Well, Friday's no problem. I'll hold off on cashing your check till then. But then the next month they'd say, oh, we don't get paid for, another 2 weeks. Can you hold off 2 weeks? And each month they'd progressively see how far they could push me without paying rent. Now you contrast that with having my property management team, and we get to play good cop, bad cop. So you got to remember, first of all, my tenants don't have a clue who I am. Secondly, if they go to the property manager and ask for an extension, the property manager can say, you know what, if it was up to me, I would gladly, let it slide. But you know what, the homeowner, he's kind of a grumpy guy. He's forcing me to give you this paperwork. So, if you get it caught up in the next couple of days, we can just rip it up. But unfortunately, I've got to serve you with these papers. And so, even though I pay my property managers to look after my properties, at the end of the year, I have so much more revenue from rent just based on the fact that I'm not personally involved. The emotion's out of it, and I'm treating it just like a business, and so should you. So there's the other reason why you don't want to invest in your own backyard is the opportunities are not usually as good as they are. I mean, if you search around, you can find much better opportunities. So I live in Calgary, Canada, and in Calgary it's an oil city. So right now, when oil is booming, basically house prices are through the roof. And for the price of one home in Calgary, I could buy, 4, 5, or 6 properties in a place like Atlanta. And once again, I don't need to micromanage it. I don't need to look after it. It's totally stress-free. If it was close to where I lived, I'd have a tendency to want to go check on the properties and get personally involved. And now I'm stressed out. I don't need to be stressed out, and neither should you. So it's very important to keep that sort of stuff in mind. That the best homes aren't typically going to be in your backyard. It's best to search for the best markets where you're going to get the best return on investment. Another big mistake I see investors make is quite often they want to invest where they vacation. And I hear this every day, the people that want to buy properties in places like Phoenix and Vegas or Florida. Those markets were great at one point, but they've gone up quite a bit because a bunch of hedge funds have gone there and bought up all the inventory. So now you're paying a premium for these homes and the numbers just don't work anymore. So you basically want to make your money wherever you're going to make the most, the best return on your investment. You can vacation and spend that money anywhere you like. You don't have to own a property where you like to visit. It just doesn't work that way. So it's all about the return on investment. Where can you make the most bang for your buck so you can enjoy it the most? And, once again, usually it's not going to be in your backyard, and quite often it's not going to be the places where you like to go on vacation. So we carefully pick what cities we invest in, and right now, in my opinion, Atlanta is by far the best. So I'm going to talk about some of the different steps that I do. Keep in mind that you don't have to do any of this because I've taken care of this for you. But if you were to try and do this yourself, here's some of the things you would have to go through in order to get, basically these properties. So first, you've got to pick the right market. And one of the problems people have is they tend to treat each city like it's one market. So when we're talking about Atlanta, there's a whole bunch of neighborhoods I will not invest in, either because they don't have good demographics, the schools aren't good, or maybe they're just too expensive. Sometimes everything's great about a neighborhood, and I'd love to buy properties there, but it's just too expensive relative to how much rent you're going to get. Then what we're going to do, the second thing you have to do is market to attract motivated sellers. You've got to be able to find inventory. Now, for us in Atlanta, we're fortunate. We've built relationships with banks, and these banks sell their homes to us, even though they could be selling for more money in a lot of cases to some hedge funds. We've already developed the relationships with them, and they know us and they like us, and so they do business with us. So if you were starting from scratch, you'd have to build those relationships, and it's very difficult to do. Then you've got to determine the market value of each property to make sure that you're getting a good deal. You can't just buy we're not here to just buy any property. It's all about buying the right properties at the right price. Then number 4 is a very difficult one. You've got to be able to repair each property. And we're doing dozens and dozens of deals, sometimes hundreds of deals. And so we've managed to build teams where we can keep down our costs because we're doing a lot of volume. Also, we own the carpet, we own the paint. We're not going and buying a home and then going to the carpet store each time we buy a home. We own all this stuff. Keeps our costs down. If you tried to do this yourself, your expenses would be a lot higher than mine. And number 5 is to rent out the property. Very difficult to do that remotely. Number 6 is we handle all the tenant issues so that you don't have to. We deal with all the tenants and toilets. And number 7 is we have a built-in exit strategy for you where we're going to sell the property to a tenant buyer. So we're going to go into this in more detail now, each of these different steps. So first thing, as I mentioned, is you got to pick the right market and neighborhoods. We do a lot of analysis and basically try to figure out within these the city of Atlanta which neighborhoods we want to buy in, and not just what neighborhoods. We can actually narrow it down to the exact street. Everybody on my team lives in Atlanta, and basically they know the city inside out. So sometimes one of the things about the U.S., if you're not from the United States like I am, is that you can have 2 schools that are a couple of blocks apart. And these schools will have very different test results. So if you buy on one street, you might be able to sell your home for considerably more, much faster, and also rent it out a lot quicker than one that's a few blocks away that feeds into the school where the grades aren't as good. Everybody wants to get their kids in the best schools. That's just one example of some of the things that we look at before we pick a neighborhood. And like I said, we sometimes narrow it down to certain streets, and sometimes one side of the street's a lot better than the other side of the street. So As I mentioned, we've worked very hard to build relationships over the last few years so that we can get motivated sellers, which in the case of Atlanta happens to be banks. And they're selling us big packages of properties, sometimes with 5, 6, 10, 20, 30 properties in it. So we're able to take down these big packages of properties and fix them up to make them not just rent ready, but something that somebody wants to actually buy, so that after you've purchased it, you're able to resell it, hopefully to your tenant buyer at a considerable price above what you paid for it. So very important, though, that if once again, if you tried to do this yourself, it would require a lot of marketing, a lot of work, and by the time you actually found a property, you might miss the opportunity. So the next thing you have to do is determine the value of each property. And this requires a lot of work. And a lot of people use different websites like Zillow and Trulia, and to be honest, they're horrible. They're a horrible source of determining the value of a property. We've got people on our team, that's their sole job, is to figure out what the value of the property is so we can get a good deal on it and make sure that it's everything works out and creates a win-win for both us, you, and your tenant buyer. So a lot of analysis goes into doing that. Also, we once again repair each of those properties, and we make it well beyond what we would normally call, rent ready. Normally, if you're doing a rent ready repair, you're basically going to fix the home just to make it safe and livable. You're not going to go much beyond that. And because we want to get the people that move into your home, we want to get them to buy this property off of you, we go above and beyond. So every single one of the bedrooms in all of our homes, for example, has a ceiling fan. Now that may sound like a really small thing to you, but Atlanta is a city where they have real seasons. And there's certain times of the year where basically if they had a ceiling fan in the bedroom, they don't have to use their air conditioner. And if they can keep their utility bills down, not only do they want to stay in your home as opposed to going to the home down the street where their utility bills are going to be higher, it also means there's a much better chance they can afford to pay you if they're not spending all their money on utilities. So another thing you really have to realize is when you try to get repairs done and you don't live in the city where you're doing getting the work done, if you don't have the right team, it's not uncommon for people to try and rip you off and give you bills that are much higher than they would if you were actually there supervising it yourself. So we have numerous teams on the ground, and all these teams are competing for our business. So each team knows that if they give us a quote that's unreasonable, or if it's much higher than the other ones, they're not going to get a lot of our work. So if you were trying to get this done yourself, you would be taking a lot of trips to Atlanta from wherever you are to supervise and basically make sure, and you'd have to micromanage your teams. And that doesn't sound like a very turnkey and stress-free investment to me. So next step is to rent out the property. And as I mentioned, that is a big task in itself, because there's a lot of different things you have to look at before you're taking in a tenant, especially if you're going to sign a 3-year lease with them. You're stuck with this person for the long term, and it's very important to make sure you get the right people. So as I mentioned, we not only do a rental agreement with them, we do an option to purchase. And as I mentioned, this will attract a much better type of tenant who wants to own the property. They're going to take better care of it. They're going to pay rent on time, because they lose the option to purchase if they're late too many times. And that's right in the contract with them. So the next thing that we do is we handle all your tenant issues for you. So if they phone and there's something that's wrong with the house, we're going to take care of it. And for the first year, as a matter of fact, we put a guarantee on the property that we're going to fix everything that comes up. And the reason we do this is, as somebody who's owned a lot of properties myself, one of the things that's really kind of been frustrating over the years is you buy a property, you have it inspected, and everything comes up good, or you fix everything that comes up in the inspection. And then 2 weeks later, after your tenant moves in, they say the dishwasher doesn't work. Well, it's very frustrating because as an inspector is only going to go into the home for maybe 3 or 4 hours, and they will find a lot of the things that are wrong. But it's sometimes these little things that take up a lot of your time, like trying to find a new dishwasher. We own hundreds of dishwashers, so it's just easier for us just to put a new one in for you and cover it. All the major stuff we know is going to be good. We know the roof. Obviously, the inspector is going to check the roof very carefully. They're going to check the foundation. All the big expensive things will have been fixed. So it's very rare that anything big is going to come up anytime shortly after your purchase. Now, the other thing you have to realize is all our homes in Atlanta are relatively new. We don't typically buy homes that are older than 1990. And so you're not going to have typically plumbing problems, electrical problems. So usually your tenant's just going to have these small little things. But if you're a busy person, last thing you want is a call, 1 week you got to replace a dishwasher, the next week you're replacing a fridge. We're just going to take care of all that for you in the first year. And usually that's when your tenants are going to have the problems, is right after they move in. So we give it a full year. That way they can go through all 4 seasons. That way they've tested the air conditioner, they've tested the furnace, so hopefully anything that would have gone wrong has gone wrong. And as I mentioned earlier, because these people want to own the house, quite often they're just going to deal with all the small things anyway. They treat it like it's their own home right from day one. So basically, as I mentioned, we're going to deal with all the tenant issues, so you don't have to. And it's very rare we're going to have to give you a call unless something major comes up. So we're going to sell the property to these tenant buyers. We have a contract with them right from day one. It's an option. They're not obligated to buy it, but we do take a deposit from them. And that deposit is non-refundable, as well as all their payments. None of that goes towards the purchase price, by the way. It's all just strictly rent. But you've now got a built-in exit strategy where there's a significant uptick for you. So if they, like I mentioned, if they close on it in 3 years, you've made 50%, maybe more, just on the difference from what you paid to what you're selling it to them for. Plus, hopefully, you've had 36 on-time payments. And as you can imagine, the return on investment with that is incredible. But if they need another 3 years, I usually recommend that you give them an extension and you increase the rent and you increase the purchase price. And now imagine what that ROI looks like at the end of the day. It's just amazing. So our goal is to create win-win situations where we're looking out for your interest, making sure you get an amazing return on your investment. We're also helping somebody who maybe was a previous homeowner. Quite often that's our tenants, a previous homeowner. We get them back into homeownership, so they're excited. And once again, that just creates an amazing opportunity for you, because now you're helping them, but getting paid a significant amount of money to do it. So once again, if you do have any problems, you just give us a call and we handle everything for you. But usually you're not going to, you're not even going to get a phone call from us. We're just going to handle all the anything that happens to come up, and those are usually minimal, and they're very few and far between, luckily. So it's all about building something that gives you that freedom, and that's really what we're after here. That's what these turnkey properties do. Is I could show you how to get into real estate and buy yourself some properties. But if you don't know what you're doing, quite often you're buying yourself a bunch of headaches. This whole program is all about alleviating that so you can enjoy yourself. So one of the biggest challenges with building this program is trying to build teams. And so one of the things, if you try to do this yourself, I can tell you that it takes months, if not years, to build the proper team. And I can tell you this from experience in building teams in many cities. So that's one of the challenges that you would face trying to do this on your own, is that you're going to have to make you'd have to make a lot of trips to Atlanta, trial and error. And one of the things I teach my students is that you could pick the best realtor. You could Google, find the top realtor in the city. You could find the top crew to fix up your homes. You could find the top property managers. You got to remember, all these people have egos, and they all have their own style of doing things. And if these people don't mesh, you don't have a team. So there's a lot of work, a lot of trial and error, and a lot of expense in building your teams. So this is something that I believe we've perfected. We have just an amazing team, everything from the property manager to our acquisition crew who build the relationships with the banks to the people doing the renovations. And because we do such large volume, we can attract great people who aren't going to mess with us, because they know that they're not just going to lose one deal. They're going to lose hundreds of deals. And so these people go out of their way to just treat us like gold, because they know that we can make or break their finances. I mean, if you look at how many deals they do with us in a year, they're making a lot of money with us. So they want to basically work hard for us. So the whole goal, though, as I mentioned, is to save you time. You do not want to try building a team, especially if you're just trying to buy 1 or 2 properties. It doesn't make sense. It's very time consuming, it's costly, and it's not cost effective unless you're doing an amazing amount of volume. And that's where we come in. So you would burn, thousands, if not tens of thousands of dollars. Quite often, like I said, people will take advantage of you if you're absentee. Property managers, I can tell you a story of one of my clients who, before they met me, they had a home in Phoenix, and they phoned me up one day and they go, Mike, how's I know you own some properties in Phoenix. Are you having a hard time keeping them rented? I go, no, not at all. Why do you ask? And they basically said that, their property manager had allegedly been trying to rent it for months and just was vacant. and they just couldn't find a tenant for it. And so I said, let me phone you back. And what I did is I phoned one of my friends in Phoenix and asked if they would mind driving by the property and knocking on the door. And sure enough, there was a tenant in the property paying cash, and their property manager had been basically pocketing the cash and saying it was vacant. So, once again, if you're absentee and your team knows that you're not going to be there, there's a lot of opportunity to mislead you. And we see this not just with property managers, we see it with your contractors who say, oh, there's no appliances there, and they go and buy you new appliances, and they basically take your old appliances and sell them to somebody else. There's a whole lot of ways that people can try and rip you off. And after over 20 years of being in this industry, I pretty much know all the tricks. And so I basically take surprise trips to every city that I work in. My team never knows when I'm going to be there. And I've also got other people on the ground that can check. I've got my teams will check on my other teams, and it keeps everybody honest, and it makes sure that we're not throwing money out the window. And quite often that's what happens to especially rookie investors when they're first starting out, is they make these mistakes that cost them tens of thousands of dollars. And my job is to take all these mistakes out of the equation for you. So basically, as I mentioned, basically there's opportunities all over the place. It's a matter of finding the best ones, and that's what I've done. I've done all my homework. I've invested in a whole bunch of other cities. In the past, I've invested in places like Las Vegas, Phoenix. We've had teams in Florida, New Orleans. All over the United States. And a lot of those opportunities have come, and now they've gone. So I could easily sell you properties in all those places I just mentioned, because I have the teams there and we have access to properties, but the numbers don't make as much sense. So I'm always looking for where can I maximize the return on investment for my investors. And so we search all over the place trying to find the best deals, and right now Atlanta is that place. So I've got a bunch of testimonials here from some other people who've dealt with me and my teams. And one comes from Chong Ho in Singapore, who actually flew to Atlanta to look at the properties. And so he wrote, I visited the properties after viewing them online. While I believe that the U.S. is a safe place to invest, I was more concerned with property management and the quality of houses and neighborhoods. I came back and bought more properties. Then I have a client named Jerome who lives in Saskatoon in Saskatchewan, Canada. And he's done a bunch of business with me now. And he says, Mike has great teams in the markets where he invests and recommends these markets to his clients. We bought a property in Atlanta because it had a good ROI. The properties that he showed were all in good neighborhoods and updated with a fresh look. I'm looking forward to doing more dealings with Mike and his teams in the U.S. I also have somebody from San Francisco, Mr. Wong, who wrote, after an extensive due diligence, I bought 2 houses and plan on buying more. This was not the only turnkey operation that I investigated, but it's the only one that I bought from. And Vince, who actually lives in Atlanta, wrote, initially I bought 4 properties using my retirement account. I was impressed with the property management team and delighted with my return on investment. My wife recently acquired 3 properties, and we feel much safer with our money out of the diluted stock markets. Now, the interesting thing about Vince is that he actually lives in Atlanta, and instead of trying to build teams himself and try to buy properties and fix them himself, he just realized how much quicker and more efficient and how much better the return on investment is to have it all done for him, as opposed to trying to, try to do this by himself. So that was very good testimonial. Also, Wayne, who's a realtor in a city just outside of Toronto, Ontario, Canada, wrote, as a Canadian realtor who is looking for U.S. properties personally as well as for clients, it was important that I found the right market and team to deal with. After much research and due diligence, I bought 4 homes personally and have helped clients buy homes for Mike's team. I have great confidence in referring clients to them and would be glad to provide references for anyone else who is thinking of investing with them. Now, the interesting thing for Wayne is he wasn't just buying for himself. He had to do extra due diligence because he was not buying for his clients, he was referring clients to us. And so he had to do a lot of homework on both us and the project. And so once again, another great testimonial. So the main thing is we're here to guide you through every step. So if you live in the U.S., great. If you live in a place like Canada, such as I do, or somewhere else in the world, I can help you with things such as the taxation, minimizing the taxes, protecting yourself from liability issues. I know all the different things that you go through as a foreigner trying to invest in the U.S. I can help you with that. If you're American, I can help you, invest with your IRAs and help you with your put your retirement money to much better use. So my goal is to make you more money so that you can buy more properties, and hopefully we can do deals together over and over and over again. This isn't meant to be just a one-time thing. I'm here to build long-term relationships with you. So once again, whether it's to spend more time with your family, to travel more, for your kids' education, or to give back more, I'm here to help you. So I'd like to invite you to a private strategy session. If this is something that resonates with you, I'd love to have a one-on-one conversation so I can show you how we can help you build a better future, a better retirement, and just have more freedom and better lifestyle. And that's what I'm here for. So I'd like to invite you for that. If this is something that resonates with you, please let me know, and I'd be happy to have a one-on-one strategy session with you. And I'm going to send you a $25 gift card after we've spoken as a thank you for giving me a chance to talk to you. So thanks very much, and I look forward to hearing from you. And if there's anything I can do to help, please let me know.